Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Qur'an-Alone.com. Today is Monday the 12th of December 2022 and I'm working my way through some of the kind of questions or repeatedly asked questions or various things like that I get, and as a way of sort of preparing the ground for what I'm going to do next. And so this question comes in various forms, but why don't you start a community? Why didn't you start a community? I want to start a community. Will you help me? The Quran believers should live in a community. All those sorts of questions. So I'm going to kind of answer that in combination with another question which I'm asked, or people express surprise. Why isn't your channel really big? You can grow your channel. It could be a huge channel and blah blah blah. So let's start with the community thing first. If you have looked at some of my earlier videos, and when I'm saying earlier, I do mean like years ago, sort of 2015, 2016. I did think about it, and I talk about it in some of those much earlier videos. But I've come to the view that that in my case, that wasn't really what I was, to use a Christian sort of parlance, called to do. That my task was something different to that. I think it's wonderful if people can create communities and so on, or at least live nearby other believers. However, I think, in my own view, I think that most of the thinking along this line is impossible, purely from practical geographical point of view. But I think that, let's say you had a lot of people in the same city, I don't think it would come to anything. And the reason is, and this is nothing to do with Quran believers or non-Quran believers or whatever, it's just people in general. I think people now in general are so delusional and solipsistic and egocentric that then they're incapable of forming a community unless there's real hardship. And that's my considered opinion on any front, really. I think that if the price of people have high ideals, but they don't, people don't really want to put practical work behind it. So, and people in general, just in general, are very comfortable, or they're not so comfortable now in Europe, but over the majority of the time that I've been making these videos, they've been too comfortable. Now perhaps they need it. But generally, especially if you live in the West, the people you're dealing with are, I think you can objectively define them as delusional. The other point that I've noticed just in my work over this, whatever it is now, 8 years or so, is that you meet a certain type of critic, if you want to call it that. They like everything but, Sam, I like your work, but this is one thing. And you get these, there are different, the trolling has actually changed. It's developed over the years. It used to be death threats and all of that. And, you occasionally get those, but it tends more to be, the new troll is, I love your work. I love everything. It's just this one thing I don't like. So it's sort of setting up. It's sort of the saccharine troll, if you want to call it that. Now, I think this is quite an interesting development, because what trolls have realised is that people just don't read their comments, so they want to sort of draw you into the comment, and it's a sort of passive-aggressive sort of thing. Well, people are more like this in general now. They're more hypocritical. They're more delusional, and they're not unable. I'm not, it's just true in general. They're unable to distinguish between actual help and pretend help. I have if I can find it, I'll put it up on the screen. My favorite meme of all time is about air support. It's this American GI sort of fighting a war, and he's calling in air support, and there's an aeroplane comes flying across, one of these little Cessnas, streaming a message saying, "You're doing great." This is what people think help is now. They think that's it. And you get tons of people who do that. People say, yeah, but I've been supporting your channel. Oh, what you mean you've been consuming all of the work that I've been doing for free for 8 years or whatever it is. And it's not just me. I mean, other people have this too. So what I'm trying to say is that people they literally can't distinguish And what you'll find is that people who actually support what you do is be like 1%. And those people are very low on using your time or any of that. But the people who don't support you, I'm talking about actual support, those people will chew up your time ad infinitum and not even notice. And what I'm talking about, I'm not just complaining about my own personal experience. I'm saying that this translates into reality. People have very high expectations, and so the sort of differential between their expectations, which are usually undefined and unobtainable, compared to what they're actually really in reality prepared to put into it. The differential between this is huge, and it's easy. You can test, if people come and approach you and you just ask them to do something, 8 times out of 10, they'll be enthusiastic, but 8 times out of 10, if you just give them a job to do, they'll go away because they don't want to work. What they actually want is to be entertained. So what I'm trying to say is that this mentality, wherever they want, it's just this one little thing they don't like. If you try to apply this in a real environment, what you'll do is waste your life and trying to help people who would never be satisfied anyway. There's that part of it. The next part of it, what I've learned by observing other communities, nothing to do with the Qur'an-Alone or anything to do with that, where typically they're using sort of like a community model. Someone comes into the community, they stay a week, a month, whatever it is, and then they become disillusioned with it, and then they spend the rest of their life bad-mouthing this person because it wasn't all perfect. You see, that's why I was mentioning I agree with everything, but there's always a but. And so rather than actually create anything themselves, what they do is they become a sort of like an expert in why it's not perfect. These people, we have these archetypes in a way in the Quran, so you don't have to look very far. What I'm doing is I'm not, it sounds like I'm complaining. It's not complaining. I'm describing the terrain that I've traversed and understood. And this is why I personally realized that I had to concentrate on my own efforts and output because trying to create an actual community, they just break you, use you up, churn you out, spit you out, be like a human wood chipper, that would be the end of you. And there would be nothing that would have been produced. So I realized that actually I'm the most serious person in any of this, so concentrate on me. So that's what you will find if you are serious-minded too, and there aren't very many. You'll find that is going to be the case probably. If you manage to set up a community, fantastic, but I would imagine, if you want my view, I think it's going to be more likely when people are hungry and cold. Because what I've learned about Westerners, particularly, they literally won't respond to anything. It doesn't become real to them until they're actually hungry or actually cold. The rest of it, they're too delusional and too comfortable. And it's not like this is a problem to be overcome. I'm just explaining why the incline is too steep, and I don't think it can be resolved. And you're better off concentrating on yourself and your own development, your own knowledge, and so on. See, numbers in this world, I'm just grateful I had got my wife, all right? And I know that for, a few other believers that I'm in distance contact with, if your wife is a believer, you're already, that's fantastic. But trying to forge a community and seeing that as the only way forward. I'm not saying don't you try it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is why I didn't do it, because I could see that what I had to bring, to give, would have been destroyed by that. And I came to realize that given the levels of delusion now, it was a complete waste of time. So for most people, this is just true. You do find exceptions, and I've been very blessed to have a few people support my work, and these are exceptions. The majority of people will just use you up, spit you out, and not even notice. So, and for them, it's all just theoretical. They're basically tourists. Yap. They'll talk about stuff, but they won't ever really do anything. But what they want is to be a member of. They think that what you're doing is all amazing and exciting. Apparently, no. Most of it, in fact, 80% of it, is just work and boring. Okay. My grandfather, who fought in the Second World War, described war as mainly boring, and the rest of it was terrifying. In this. There are, death threats are not pleasant. I will admit, but mainly it's discipline. It's what it really is. It's discipline, And people don't want to be disciplined. They don't want it. Not really. They like the idea of it, but they won't do it. Not really. So that's just, I'm just saying what I see, and you can, if you manage to find people who are different to that, happy you. Yes, as I've said in other contexts, if the actual price of overthrowing the world system and defeating the Antichrist, as it were, and all the rest of it was just not to have a mobile telephone, let's say, even for 6 months, even if it was just 6 months, if that was the total price, we're not talking about daily fasting or anything serious, but just that, would they do it? No, they wouldn't. So that's why. Okay, now I'm going to get into the other thing about why the channel hasn't grown. I mean, I've, as I said, been doing this for however many years. I've lost count, maybe 7, 8, something like that. And at the the peak of subscribers, sort of, at the moment, it's about 10.4 thousand, right? Now, if my wife had started a channel on how to makeup or something, she'd have had that amount of subscribers in an afternoon. Now, I make, as I've talked about before, I make long, boring videos in order to almost filter out the more insipid type of person. I mean, let's face it. It means I don't have to deal with them in the comments, and they don't have to, put up with me. So it's a win-win situation. I like that awful phrase. But there are other reasons, and this isn't sour grapes by any means. It's simply an explanation, because I think there will be other people who may attempt to make channels that draw on what I've done to some extent, or influenced by to some extent. I think you really have to decide which way you want to go. Do you want quality or do you want quantity? I think they are. Just because you don't have quantity doesn't mean you necessarily have quality, but I do think that if you build up slowly over a long period of time, probably you have quality. You found a niche audience who are prepared to put the time in or whatever it is to what you're doing. But that in this line, what I've been doing, I think the reason why it's kind of stopped or doesn't grow, 2 reasons. Number one, I think there are people who are Westerners who experienced Islam to whatever extent and didn't like it, and it didn't resonate with them, and they don't have anyone to share it with because they don't really come from that background. So it's sharing that sharing of videos that makes a channel grow, I think. So they don't share it for that reason. And I think people who come from Islamic backgrounds, I don't think they share my stuff because they're afraid to. I think that's the long and the short of it. And I have no reproach for either side. That's absolutely fine. But I think it explains why. So if you're if you decide to make a channel and develop your own presentation, I'm not saying like exactly what I've been doing, but in this area you will find that that's the case. So if you do, my suggestion would be to take quality over quantity. And the other thing about quantity is that all you end up doing is dealing with more nonsense. I don't think I think I can say this. I think Said wouldn't mind. Brother Said Mirza has experienced this on his channel, which in fact I'll link to it down below. He bought some used, I think, AdSense or something like this to promote it, and got a huge amount of traffic that way using some Google advertising. And one of his videos got, I don't know, many times more views than it would normally get, and all he got was many more times abuse and aggression than he would normally get. And he stopped doing it. He realized it was a waste of time, and it is a waste of time. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're this work is never going to be popular, just isn't. I would also say, if you decide to go along this line, decide what your objectives are. In terms of your own personal development, how much you're going to put into it, what is success for you, what your parameters are. And then when you get to those, and you have to be sure when you have, then it's time to stop. I mean, for me, I thought that I'd reached the perimeter of it a few months back after the completion of my work and so on, and I took a rest. But I hadn't. I realized that I had some more things I needed to do. But when you've done those things, then just stop, because that makes more sense, unless you can get sort of picked up and developed in other ways by going into I don't know, radio shows and all of that stuff, if you think that's important. For me, I've realized I'm not sure that it is. I think that for me, my focus was my written output. I don't think that just let's say I could control Google for 3 weeks and everybody who went to Google, doesn't matter what they looked up, they just ended up at my site. I don't think it would really make an awful lot of difference. And the reason is because most people won't read. They literally won't. They literally won't. What they want, and this isn't a criticism, it's just an observation, they want to be entertained in a mindless and mildly amusing sort of way, which is really the definition of fun. And we read in the Quran that that's what, they will fun or play and amusement. They took their faith as play and amusement. That is what they do. You won't find anything new, but you have to be ready for that. And in a way, I'm sort of explaining what you're going to find. And I think there is a generation of younger men who, they think that they're going to create societies or communities and blah, blah, blah. Maybe they will. And fantastic for you. But I'm just sharing what I've experienced. I also think it's very difficult to draw people together simply geographically. I don't think it's possible. The lockdowns are going to, clearly, they're just beginning with they're having a bit of a sort of intermission for the war in Ukraine. But once they're done with that, it will be back to, Fauci and his business plan, or not his business plan, what he's doing, etc. So I think it's going to be very difficult. So if you can have a believing family, or at least one member in your family, and concentrate on your studies, make sure that you're learning, because knowledge is worth something, then I would say that would be what I would concentrate on. If you can, if you've got things that you can share them. But my advice would be to be realistic about communities, be realistic about whether you can grow something, and understand that you're doing it for God, and then understand that it may be at a different point, but when you realize that actually I've mined this seam as far as what I can give, what I can do, and you reach the end of it, then I think you've got to be ready to kind of realize, okay, that's it, I've done what I can do, and and leave it there. So this is really, in a way, to answer these questions about community. They come in quite a few forms. I'm also asked, or people say in comments that I've seen or emails that I've received, you should have lots of subscribers, as though that would make it more valuable, which is a common conceit and usually wrong. And I just wanted to answer this to explain why I'm not interested in community, why I don't think this channel is going to grow beyond a particular point. And that for people who wish to do work on this line, it's understanding that you're dealing with a different kind of framework. I mean, let's think about it just briefly before I wrap this up. There's never been a time before in history, in human history, so far as we know, where it's been possible to teach a lesson, or, as it were, preach a sermon, if you want to call it that, and for it to be available 24 hours a day across the world. Now, the fact that there are channels which have got millions of subscribers or viewers or whatever you want to call it, and they post memes about a cat, and they have a million subscribers, and you only have 10,000. Just imagine if they didn't exist at all, but you had the opportunity to have, let's say, 10,000, 20,000, whatever subscribers, and to be available, whether or not people avail themselves of you or not, across the entire world for 24 hours a day for over a period of years. That's incredible. So I look at it in those terms. I don't compare myself with Kim Kardashian's cat. I compare myself with Caxton printing press. So on those terms, it's even numerically, it's very successful. Anyway, I don't know if that's going to make some sense. I should think for the kinds of people who are ambitious for themselves and so on, they'll understand what I'm talking about in this. But I just wanted to hit those points and to answer those questions. I will be looking to cover, to sort of summarize thoughts on a few remaining questions. And I've got some more, some sort of more teachings I want to do from reader.Qur'an-Alone.com. But God willing, that will be coming out over the next couple of weeks, whatever it is. Anyway, that's it. That's all for now. I hope everyone is well. If you're listening on YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an free and other books from Qur'an-Alone.com using the button in the top right hand corner, or buy hard copies there at 10% less than on Amazon. I do not monetize this channel and I make all my work available free, but you can use the link in the drop down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.